Welcome back to Breakfast Central. Now, Nigeria's political temperature is rising as we inch closer to 2027. A new voter sentiment tracker by SBM Intelligence paints a striking picture. One presidential candidate is leading significantly in favorability. Wow, that's a tongue twister. Favorability ratings, while President Bola Tinubu faces a steep disapproval across most zones. Now, nearly 80% of Nigerians surveyed say that the country is headed in the wrong direction. Sobering verdict on governance, economy, and security.
Now, is this a snapshot of frustration or a forecast of the future? And how should political actors, institutions, and citizens interpret these findings as the 2027 general election approaches? To help us make sense of these questions, we're joined this morning by partner and head of research at SBM Intelligence, Ikemesit Effiong. Good morning. Thank you very much.
Morning. Great to have you join us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's talk about this survey.
Yeah.
You know, what was taken into consideration? What were the factors? What were the geographical, maybe areas or persons considered to be able to reach this conclusion? And maybe give us deeper insight into what the report showed.
Okay, so this was a dipstick survey. We basically talked to 829 Nigerians in 8 Nigerian states, as well as the Federal Capital Territory. These are the states that we usually poll fairly regularly for our widely followed Jollof Index report, which tracks food inflation as well as cost of living, right? And we just wanted to get a sense in the lead up to the election seasons. There are lots of people who, you know, are on shows like yours talking about politics. You know, obviously, I was listening to the last conversation, right, about the elections that are imminent, right, in the governorship elections that are imminent. So we just wanted to add a quantitative, right, understanding to the conversation, and also add the average Nigerian in terms of what their thinking is about the current state of the country, where their headspace is with respect to how they see 2027 shaking up, right, and what are the issues which, at least according to what our respondents say, will be defining how they vote and make those choices, right, next year.
So how do surveys like this affect, Nigerians come election day?
I don't know that it exactly affects them. I quite like the intro when you talked about whether it's actually a snapshot of the current state of affairs or it's a predictor of the future. I generally do not like to see polls as prophetic, right, in that sense, because people's views and perspectives can change. Right. This was a culmination of data that we've gathered over the first half of the year, and literally during the data gathering process, we saw, for example, the perception ratings of the political parties literally switch and change. So in February, March, while we were doing the data gathering, that was at the height of the political drama that was going on within the APC that led to those high-profile defections, and we saw the favorability rating of the ADC literally change in real time. Right.
That was very dramatic, actually. What happened with the ADC and the favorability changing? Because for 1 minute, it was like like they called it the beautiful bride.
I guess it has to do with individuals in these parties. Now, looking at the geography of Nigeria and ethnicity, do you think it has any effects on the way the favorability ratings of the people? How much of an effect does it have?
Well, we did test for that directly, but what we found quite interesting was that the president, for example, his approval rating in the Southwest, for example, which is his home district, right, isn't the best. It's actually the second worst, right, in the country, just behind the Northeast. So if you're looking at geopolitical zones as a proxy for sort of ethnicity, then that leads to some interesting findings. The president doesn't appear to be favorably regarded in the Southeast and the South primarily, and then the Northwest, right, follows those two geopolitical zones. Asking questions around ethnicity is a little bit tricky because usually Nigerians face...
No, not directly.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, from the sampling.
Yeah. So, Nigerians will often not tell you... directly, like that would be an issue. And that's, again, another element of sort of the polling that you have to account for. If you look at the voting intent, if you look at PVC, collection rates, at least as self-reported by our respondents, the regions that seem to do the highest. And if you look at voting intention, so the people actually say, okay, I have my PVCs, I'm following the elections, and I'm actually going to vote in January. And take note, we're having this conversation in the first half of 2026. These numbers can change. We hope to do this. We hope to do a lot more of this, right? Actually, several, right?
Well, we're
in the
looking
lead up to the elections, the regions where the president isn't doing very well are also the regions that are reporting the highest sort of, metrics on those intents. People who have the most PVCs, people who say they want to vote, and people who say they are likely to vote for the opposition.
I wanted to ask what the specific failures are regarding those who have sort of lost, or those who the president has lost his favor with. There's a video that we started the show with. I don't know if our producers have access to it. In court, a criminal, we don't know what the person, well, it's not a criminal. A person who was accused of crime was in court, and in a bid to appeal for leniency from the judge, the person says, I have handwork. It's President Tinubu. Let's take a look at the video.
Oh, yeah.
And that is a video of the person blaming outrightly the president and saying, look, I have handwork. Please have mercy on me. It's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. That is, in a way, another decline in presidential approval rating, this time from a suspect. What are some of the factors that have driven and that have been driving the presidential approval rating? I wouldn't say continue to drive because, like you said, anything can change.
Yeah, so one of the questions that we asked was that we asked respondents right across the country to rate the president on a scale of 1 to 5 on 5 key indicators: inflation, taxation, security, jobs, and power. Right, where 1 being very poor and 5 being very good. The ratings were not great.
Let's go
right?
to the details.
Yes, so I mean you have a situation where the geopolitical zone where the president did the best was in the northwest, and is on a scale of 1 to 5, his aggregate score was 2.02. Right, yeah. In his home geopolitical zone, the southwest, he was at a 1.64. He fared the worst in the southeast at a 1 point. Yes, at a 1.14. So basically, nationally, the president is basically at like a 1.8, 1.9 out of 5. And I think that story that's encapsulated right in that video, right, bears true in the data, in that for many Nigerians, they hold the current administration largely responsible for the current state of the economy, for the fact that security-wise, look at that perception, for example, 45% say insecurity is their primary concern. You combine that with the economy, it's like a 79% composite of our respondents.
I'm quite surprised that job has, on the graphics we have on screen now,
yeah.
The chart rather, 2%.
Yeah, so Nigerians are sort of distinguishing like the wider economy from jobs. So if you look at jobs in terms of like the formal economy, access to more formal roles and all of that, Nigerians appear to be parsing that out and distinguishing that from the wider economy. You can have a hustle, you can start and run a business. Almost all of us have second caps as content creators, lifestyle creators, influencers, right, and the likes. That's emblematic of wider economic activity.
CEOs.
Exactly. Yes. It looks like you've been assaulted a little bit on your WhatsApps in that sense.
Olive is one of them.
Yeah. So. Okay, I'll stay out of that. But yeah. But the thing is, so you can look at wider economic activity. What are all the avenues that you use to derive an income, right? And some of that can be warehoused in the formal economy. A lot of that for a lot of Nigerians is in the informal economy, right? What we're seeing with the rankings and the ratings is that a lot of Nigerians are basically giving up on the formal economy and they're just trying to make a living for themselves. And even at doing that, they feel as though government is making that really difficult.
So this is good feedback for policymakers and the government if they want to change the perception. They know where the fault lines are. They know what to do. But what's the spirit behind the SBM Intelligence decision to carry on the surveys, and why you want to keep doing it?
I mean, data is good. Data gives you like a clear-eyed understanding of where you're going, of where the contour lines are. Like you said, political actors can look at the numbers. Some of them would try to see it as an endorsement of what they are doing or as an indictment of their opponents. That's not necessarily how we like to see it. This is basically Nigerians offering sort of like a term sheet or a or sort of a homework, right? Yeah, to the politicians in terms of these are the things we're worried about. This is how we feel about the country. 80% of our respondents say the country isn't heading in the right direction. These are sort of our priority areas, not only in the lead up to the elections, but post the elections. And these are the things you should be paying attention to. Those are some of the kind of things that we want to bring to the discourse by doing things like the voter sentiment tracker.
All right, so in the course of your survey, were there questions around the confidence Nigerians have in INEC? Because we know how, the important role INEC is going to play, or plays rather, in our election. So was that question asked? Did people indicate if they have confidence in INEC? Well,
so that's a question that that's a theme we want to explore, in sort of like a follow-up, in sort of a follow-up, a wave 2, wave 3, right, of the voter sentiment tracker. Safe to say, if many Nigerians don't feel confident in the current direction of the country, confidence in INEC may not be as great. We've seen in past election cycles, and we did polling in 2023 and 2019 where Nigerians were not very confident in INEC's ability, right, to carry out free, fair, and credible elections. So it will be good to test that in this cycle. What we decided to focus on in this particular cycle, away from sort of the bread and butter political questions, was to talk about artificial intelligence and misinformation and how that's likely to affect. And many Nigerians are concerned.
What were some of the things the conclusions you came to? And I'm asking because there is really a huge concern for me in many ways. One is the fact that you're looking at the fact that brands are now using artificial intelligence models. I'm hoping that one day they will not come and say, okay, people no need to come. Breakfast Central will be done by AI.
Why do you think I have several side hustles?
I guess some stations have tried that before in terms of using AI to show. So
So two things that we found quite interesting. Right, 79% of our respondents said social media is now their primary source of information. In past cycles, radio, television, especially radio, was a lot more competitive. So a majority of Nigerians are definitely, in the lead up to the elections, they'll be getting a lot of their information, right, from social media. Only 43% say they go out of their way to verify information. And geographically, it is really, 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 really skewed. I think it's only in the Southeast where we had north of 40% of respondents say they fact-check social media. In the Southwest, which you would probably say is the most digitally connected part of the country, only 77% of people say they fact-check, even though 60% of respondents say they're very concerned about, deep fakes.
I mean, even as media practitioners ourselves, we have to be on our toes and double-check and triple-check. So imagine people that don't even have that media background and media literacy. It's the wild, wild west out there in terms of AI and its effect, and of course the algorithms. I'm just thinking out loud that, having done this survey and looking at the pace and ease at which it was done, if maybe in the future we could adopt blockchain technology to conduct elections, they will be devoid of thugs, ballot snatching, undue influence by INEC chairman, and we'll get good results. I mean, but I guess it's not now. It's been done in Estonia. It's not like it's something that is just out of reality. It does exist.
Realm of possibilities,
out of the realm of possibilities. It does, and it will go a long way into. So you stop worrying about the human factor and all of that. And I think it might be overall cheaper because we're looking at upwards of almost ₦1 trillion to conduct elections that people will still doubt. And even the government's budget for INEC's defense in courts is huge. So it's almost like they're preparing for a flawed election.
I mean, there's certainly a point to be made around trust, just generally, but particularly trust in technology, right? Oftentimes, the tech are scoped out by designers, by regulators, and by technical experts generally, right, may work and may fine. And may be fine generally, but you've got to ask the question as to whether voters, politicians themselves, their agents, other actors, and critical stakeholders trust that this system will operate. One of the studies that we did, for example, in the lead up to the 2023 elections, we actually did it in 2022, was around trust in beavers, because that was when that set up for, verifying and transmitting election results debuted in Nigeria. And one of the things that we called out in that report was that not enough of Nigeria was sufficiently covered by 4G technology. At the time, it was like 43% of the country was covered by 4G tech for beavers to actualize on the promise that INEC and technical stakeholders said it was going to deliver on. And we saw that play out, right, in the elections. So it's one thing to have the tech. It's one thing for it to have been tried and tested, right, in other jurisdictions. It's another thing for Nigerians to believe that they can interact with it in a way where it would work, it would be consistent, right across the country, right? We've definitely advanced in terms of 4G coverage, but there are still those concerns about whether beavers will work. We still saw, technical issues, right, come up in Ekiti. Just last week, right, yeah. And so how much of that will change significantly between now and January is anyone's guess. So technology is good and great, but I think with the tech in terms of delivering the elections, but in terms of how technology is used by political actors to shape narrative, shape perceptions, right, and influence voters in the lead up to the elections. One of the things that we did say in this report is that we saw some AI and some misinformation, right, deployed in 2023, but this election, we think, will be Nigeria's first proper artificially intelligence-influenced election.
Okay, that sounds exciting. Beyond rating the popularity and acceptability of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, did you check for his opponents?
Oh, yes, we did. I mean, we would have been crucified if we did not. Yes. So the president's net favorability ratings obviously was in negative territory, right? Not too much of a surprise in that sense. Incumbents tend to, fight right from sort of the back of the queue, usually, especially when they are up for re-elections. Sort of like the main candidate that everyone thinks, right, will run primarily against the president, Peter Obi's net favorability rating was the only positive of all of the main candidates at plus 58.3.
Oh, so the fact that you're not happy with the government doesn't automatically translate that you have favorable ratings of every other person?
Yes, exactly, right. Yeah, as you can see, Rotimi Amechi was second worst at minus 46.7, Atiku Abubakar, almost minus 32. Rabiu Kwankwaso, whom many expect would be Peter Obi's running mate, was at minus 21.6, Serika minus 22%. What seems interesting to us, right, from this is that the common denominator, apart from the fact that they are the most prominent opposition figures between Peter Obi and Rabiu Kwankwaso, this may be less of the case with Rabiu Kwankwaso is they haven't necessarily been part of any federal, well, at least Peter Obi hasn't been part of any federal cabinet. He's obviously not been president, right, or run for government. Rabiu Kwankwaso has served in a federal cabinet, but not many Nigerians either know that or they are not marking him down as consistently as the other three: Atiku Abubakar, former Vice President, Rotimi Amechi, former Transport Minister, obviously Bola Tinubu, currently running this administration. So it appears as though for many Nigerian voters, right, if you've been part of federal governance, and let's be fair and let's be honest with ourselves, right, governance in Nigeria is highly centralized, right, and so most of our focus is on what's going on in Aso Rock and all of the people who are surrounding that. Then it appears as though voters are significantly marking those sort of candidates.
Yes, that's why that guy in the court made that statement.
Was there any point in time, perhaps, that the age of the people you asked questions affected this particular survey?
You do see some significant variation, right, across age demographics. Generally, younger voters, more skeptical of political figures, much more damning in their verdicts, right, on the performance of political parties, both those who are currently in power as well as the opposition, generally more pessimistic, right, about the current state of the country, the current state of the economy, and especially when it comes to economic issues. Older voters tend to be a little more contextual in how they view the issues. But generally, it's a matter of degrees. At least that's what the data is showing us. So it's not as though older voters are significantly more optimistic than younger voters. It's a matter of them being less pessimistic than younger voters.
And also, I mean, we've seen high degrees of voter apathy in our staggered elections, Osun State, FCT municipal polls, and it seems like it's going to be a trend going forward. Is it something you wish to consider in the future, participation, if people would actually, because it's easy to participate in polls like yours, but actually going out on election day when there are things to do to watch on TV, when people organize community games, they do barbecue, and then the hassle of getting your PVC, it would be nice to know what the perception is for ordinary Nigerians if they're actually going to go to the polls and vote. Is this something you're considering?
It's something we actually tested in this, in this VST. So we talked about high turnout intention. Now, caveats, right? This is self-reported. A lot of the data gathering happened, right, in February, March, April.
Of 2026.
Of 2026. A lot can change. It obviously looks good to field reps, right, and researchers. If you tell them, oh, yes, I intend to vote, doesn't actually mean, right, that you go out, right, to vote. But in terms of what the data, right, is actually showing us, there is, Nigerians are reporting that they intend to turn out significantly, right, to vote. Also highly correlated by geopolitical zones. So, for example, in the Northwest, the Northeast, and in the Southeast, 80+% of our respondents say they have their PVCs and they will vote. That number plummets to the low 40% for the Northeast and for the Southwest, right? Which again would be a concern if you're an APC supporter, you're here in the region, you are the president, right? Or you are advising him in that sense. But when you square this against the actual reality of how voter turnout has panned out over the last 3 general election cycles, but even during the off-cycle, right, elections, again, we have like a recent test case from literally last weekend, right, in Ekiti, where turnout was not fantastic. Oftentimes, the reality is a lot more complicated in that sense. But in terms of in terms of what voters are saying, a lot of them are, at almost you have a situation where almost 7 in 10, right, and voters are saying that they'll turn out to vote. That's why.
But I'm happy you put that caviat in the beginning.
Oh yeah. It's very important.
Because it varies, and people can change their mind with regards to the current situation where they.
True, and what that means in terms of in terms of the reality is that what we did with the report is we built out two likely scenarios. A high voter turnout scenario where if we have voter turnout north of 60%, the opposition becomes more competitive because in that case, they are mobilizing blocks of voters who generally do not turn up for the elections, or new voters, right, or voters who are generally motivated to vote against the incumbent. And we have a low voter turnout scenario where if voter turnout is in the 30%, right, then the incumbent does very competitive. Because we've seen this not only in Nigeria, but right across the world. Low voter turnout is highly correlated to how well incumbents do. Your chances of re-election are a lot higher if a lot of people don't show up.
So in plain terms, for people who are saying, I don't care about voting this year, my vote will not count, as we wrap up, what would you say to those who don't want to be a part of the CVR exercise that's wrapping up on the 10th of July? We have a few days, I think less than 2 weeks now to the end of that. What would you say to them? And why is it important?
It does count. It does count. Your vote matters. Your vote matters. If enough people are disillusioned with the system that they sit on the fence, then the people who are current operators or who currently benefit from the system, right, will statistically do better, right? Yeah. But if a lot more people who generally do not show up during elections or first-time voters, people are collecting their PVCs for the first time and have the opportunity to use them, then the field is a lot broader. You have an option, right, for more political views to be represented, and more candidates are likely to do better than those who are already doing well and are sitting tight right now.
All right, Ikemesit, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and kudos to SBM Intelligence. We look forward to seeing further surveys that you will do and seeing if the results would maintain the current reality or if there'd be a change.